Welcome everyone to our very first episode of our three-part series on the journey to understanding public debt management matters in Kenya. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of public debt management, a must listen to for everyone who's ever wondered about the numbers looming over Kenya's economic landscape. Let's first set the context by introducing to you the Okoa Uchumi Campaign Coalition. The Okoa Uchumi campaign is a civil society platform committed towards working with stakeholders to resolve Kenya's public debt crisis. The campaign advocates for balanced and equitable budgets as a means of achieving debt sustainability and economic inclusion. The campaign seeks to bolster constitutional safeguards in public debt management and to push for the accountability of political leaders in public debt management. Currently, the coalition has over 30 organizations and counting. To join the movement, you go to www.okoauchumi.com, and I repeat, www.okoauchumi.com. You can also follow us on our social media accounts. On X, formerly Twitter for those who still live under a rock, is at Okoa Uchumi _KE. On Facebook at Okoa Uchumi Kenya. TikTok, we are also on TikTok. We are not old, at Okoa Uchumi. On LinkedIn, we are at Okoa Uchumi Kenya. Okoa Uchumi is convened by the Institute for Social Accountability, also known as TISA number 9, who are leading these episodes that you're listening to right now. Take some time to follow us on our social media channels. And I'll repeat, on X, we are on at TISA Kenya. On Facebook is at TISA Kenya. On LinkedIn is at TISA Kenya. And on TikTok, we are there at TISA Kenya. Now, I'm giving you a few minutes to follow us before we get into it. To begin this very insightful series, we dive straight into the fire. I'll say the fire, the country's national debt. And if you do not know that we are in a debt distress, then I think you need to buy something that is called a gadget to get you to understand where we are at in matters economy in this country. The topic that impacts every Kenyan, as I have said. To help us navigate this very interesting topic, we are going to be joined by, or rather we are already joined by Dr. Abraham Rugo, aka Dr. Arms, an expert in economics and budget planning. Dr. Rugo is the country director at the International Budgets Partnership Kenya, and with no doubt, a household name when it comes to national budget planning. Karibu sana, Dr. Rugo.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure for me to come and just have another conversation on these matters. I think it's a critical time to be having this discussion. And also just to mention that it's not a new discussion. It's just that now it's taken a very special life of its own, given where we are as a country.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. He's already begun to dive into that conversation. Before we begin, can I refer to you as Arms?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we are loosening it up because it's a podcast.
Sure.
Karibu sana, Dr. Arms and Arms. I want us to kick this conversation off in a very light way, and I want us to play a small word game. When I say a word, I will say a word. You tell me what comes into your mind. So you're ready?
Yes.
Okay. Yellow.
UDA.
UDA. Plate.
Food.
Food. Public debt.
Stress.
Okay. Yellow, UDA, plate, food, public debt, stress. I hope we will be able to get into why you have thought of those things very quickly as we get into this conversation. Shall we?
Sure.
Okay.
Good.
Thank you. So let's start by breaking down the basics. Tell me, why have you thought of the three words that you just mentioned?
I think it's semblance. So yellow, I thought UDA is really the color that has really, we're just coming from, well, it's now past a year, but it's still the number, the color of the government in the house. Plate, food. I mean, we're recording this just around lunchtime. I'm yet to have lunch. So really that's what I'm thinking about right now. And public debt is why I said stress is because that's where I feel That's the word that comes to my mind right now.
Mhm.
I wish it was more a different word. Facilitation.
Mhm.
Progress. But I feel like there's a bit of a strain that causes right now. Yeah.
Yeah, so Ams has broken down why those words came to his mind
Mm.
when we began this conversation. So I want us to get into this conversation real quick. And to start off us off is Dr. Ams. Can you give our listeners a brief of the overview of Kenya's current national debt situation and what factors have contributed to its growth over
Mm.
the years?
I think allow me to start by even defining public debt, because I think it means different things to different people. But I want to explain it that a debt, it's an economics, it's a financial situation that you get into when your income and your expenditure are not, especially when your expenditure is higher than your income. This is what it means at a household level, for instance, or even at a personal level. If you want to buy something, whatever it could be a phone, it could be a piece of land, it could even sometimes be to take your children to school or even take yourself to school. But you only have so much income. So assume the gadget you want costs 1,000 shillings, and you only have 500 shillings, and you definitely must have it. Then you go and ask somebody for a loan, or you take Kunfuliza, or whatever you take it. That is a debt. That difference is a debt, and of course it comes with the interest payment and how you'll pay it. On a good day, if it's a friend loaning you, they say utarudisha tu vile iko, or rather you just bring it back as it is. So public debt really is how countries are able to meet the difference between their revenues and their expenditures. So the countries and governments of those countries have responsibilities to provide healthcare, agriculture services, water, food, build roads, build bridges, manage calamities, floods, disasters of all manner of kinds, and the like. But they only can raise so much revenue in terms of taxes, in terms of the incomes they make, because the governments raise their incomes through taxes. And therefore, public debt is a result of that difference. And for the case of Kenya, it is when we do our national budget. And when I use the word national here, I'm referring to both the budget for the national government and counties, all of each together. When we do that budget, we find that we want to spend the equivalent of 300 shillings, just as an example, for 3 trillion. But we find that we can only raise 200 shillings in revenues. So the difference, which is what we call deficit, is 100 shillings. And that 100 shillings is what then we borrow for that year. Now, I want you to now imagine every year we have that kind of a difference. And there's no year we have had our income being equal to our expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
At least not. There are years where we struggle to try and balance the two,
Mm-hmm.
but all the years we've always had a deficit. Which basically means we've always had our expenditures being higher than the revenue that we can collect in terms of taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So over the years, and especially in the last 10 or so years, that deficit has kept growing and growing very fast. And because it's growing and growing very fast, it means we are borrowing and borrowing also at the same speed.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, because the things you have planned to do are actual public services that are being delivered
Mm-hmm.
to citizens, it means that if you don't meet the full target of the revenue of the income you need,
Mm-hmm.
including through borrowing, it means that there are certain services you are not delivering. Of course, that's just one of the interpretations.
Mm-hmm.
We also have situations where, and we will perhaps talk about it a bit later in the conversation, where you have accountability. So that's what has risen to the situation. So because our borrowing has grown very fast,
Mm-hmm.
we found ourselves right now with, we are now just above 10 trillion, about 10.5 trillion Kenya shillings in terms of total public debt. And that is against a total national wealth. It's debated of between 14 trillion and 16 trillion. And I say that because we seem to have different numbers of what is the total national wealth, what we call the gross domestic product. We seem to have a different figure in different quarters. So that's a state of our public debt. But you see, debt in and of itself, from what I have just described, is not a bad thing in and of itself, because the principle is that I need to provide healthcare. It will cost me 2 million shillings. I only have 1.5 million shillings, and therefore I need to borrow 500,000 so that I provide. Because you cannot choose. You cannot say, now, since I have 1.5 million, I will only provide to the first 200 people who are sick. The rest can take care of themselves. No. But debt then becomes a challenge when either one, you are not putting the resources in the rightful places. So imagine now, in the case of the 1.5 million and 2 million, for healthcare, assume you borrowed that money, and instead of buying medicine for the hospitals and what have you, you buy a car or a house for a government official. You see, you have spent the money, you borrowed the money, you have spent the money, but you have not provided, you have not solved the problem. And therefore then you leave people more deplorable. Now remember that debt, just like at a personal level, still has to be paid. So that's the current state, I would say, of our debt. But secondly, is the fact that you have to pay. Now, because of the fast borrowing that we have gone into, we now are having to pay quite a lot. Because remember, for every loan, for every debt that we take, there are two types of payments. First is what we call the principal payment. So let me go back to the 1,000 shillings. Sorry, the 500 shillings you had to borrow in my initial example at a personal level. If I gave you at 10%, interest, it means that when you bring me back, I expect 550, not 500.
Yes.
So I need you to bring me the principal, the 500 I gave you, and the 50. So in the current situation, you actually have both the principal payments and the interest payments. Because of the speed at which we have borrowed, they are coming due. I also tell you, I want you to pay me by 24th of December because I want to use that money for my Christmas. So imagine you're on 23rd and you still don't even have the 500. So you're telling me, no, but can I pay you the interest?
The 50.
The 50. But I'm like, no, I need all my money. If anything, actually, the interest we can discuss, but I need my principal. That's what has happened. That now we are at a point where we have to pay. So what does this mean? In this current financial year, at least 70 shillings, because the figure is higher, at least 70 shillings out of every 100 shillings that we are collecting in terms of revenue. Of the government is going to pay public debt. Now, that's not a small number. Because what that means is that out of the remaining 30 maximum, you have to pay for the police, you have to pay for education, you have to pay teachers, you have to do transfers to counties, you have to pay civil servant salaries, you have to pay pensions, and the list is endless. So what does that do? Because you only have so much money and you're paying so much into public debt, then you only have two options. You either do not provide public services, or you default in paying you fail to pay your debt. You cannot have both. So you're in a vicious cycle where you either don't do both, And if you have to do both, then it means you borrow more.
Yeah. And let me ask you, let me cut you there because I'm just wondering. We have this cycle where we have this need, service delivery,
Yeah.
and then we have this debt that needs to be paid.
Mm.
And you're telling us that in an event where we do not have enough money to repay our debt, or rather the revenue that we've collected is not enough, we have to you've mentioned default. But then I have this question, because this is not what has been happening in this country. This country has been doing this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. We have this need, we have our recurrent expenditure, we have stolen money through budgeted corruption, but then there are services that need to be done. And we have tried collecting money through revenue collection. It is not yet getting to where we want. So what we do is we go out of the country, go to these countries that are ready to give us loans with very those very quick loans that you're given. And then when you read the contracts, you're like, oh my God, what did I sign for? So this country, what has been happening in this country is that when we realize that we are chewing more than we can, we're biting more than we can chew, what we have been doing is we borrow more. We borrow more and borrow more. The cycle that you're talking about, the deficits that now we are still, I think we have a big plan, or now I don't think it's a big plan per se, but we want to steal. We want to theft, kleptocracy.
Yeah.
We want to steal from the basket, and then we also want to show that we are doing some services, and then we want to so many things that we want to do as a country. But by and large, what we've been doing is we've been filling up this gap with more debt, and we are not aware of where we'll get that money. Just as you said, our debt to repay has come, and we do not have the money. So I think, would you say that our country, as opposed to just stopping, okay, hold, let's figure it out, what we've been doing to save this situation is to borrow more?
I think you're right. When you look through the budget documents across a couple of years now, what you notice is that even in years when our revenue did not perform, we did not reduce our expenditure. Again, I go back to the 1,000 discussion. So at a personal level, you want to buy this gadget, or you want to make this expenditure of 1,000 shillings, and you only have 500 bob. Then your friend loans you the 500 shillings. Or before even you go to your friend loaning you 500 shillings, it occurs to you, or where you are expecting some income, you actually get 300. So you are left with two options. One, do I borrow 700? Because now I have a short of 200. Or do I look for something that will cost less, so that then I reduce? I still either borrow the 500 I had planned, which is what I know I can afford and I'm able to pay back, or do I actually even reduce that even altogether and say, I will borrow 300, I'll spend 300, and therefore I'll buy something that costs 600 bob. So that has not happened. Because what we see is that so every year when we do the budget, we start with a deficit. In other words, we have a deficit that is approved. A step back. So when the budget is prepared, it's tabled in the National Assembly. As I said, this is for the national whole process. The National Assembly considers and makes a decision by voting. When they vote for the budget, the difference between the revenue that is expected and the expenditure is a deficit, which basically they give authority to the government of the day to go and borrow, to go and determine how they want to borrow, both whether they want to borrow domestically or they want to borrow externally. But what we have seen is that typically of the example I've just given you, so you start with a deficit of 500 shillings. Then along the way, you realize you will not make even the 500 shillings you thought you would make. You will get 400 or 300. Instead of reducing, you increase your deficit to 700. So you borrow 700. So you've seen within the year, deficits growing, sometimes up to 99%. Now, literally, that's almost like doubling, you know? And that's a big challenge, because then what happens is that because the government, unlike at a personal level, at a personal level, you can quickly think and ask yourself, by the way, if I borrow this money and I already do not have an income, how will I pay it? So you can quickly come to your senses. For a government, it's built on the principle of sovereignty of the people,
Mhm.
in eternal perpetuity. In other words, the government will always be there, and those in the future will take care of the costs.
Yeah.
So some of the loans we are paying right now were loans that were taken in the 60s, in the 70s, you know, for things that some are benefiting us, others we have questions.
Mhm.
The loans we are taking today and the debts we are incurring today will be paid. And that's why the Constitution in Article 201 made a provision that the benefits and the burdens of public debt shall be shared equitably between current and future generations. You know,
Aye.
no, it's a fact. The reason for putting that principle in place is because the framers of the Constitution did not want a situation where we in the current generation can just wake up and just spend on all manner of fun. So we borrow money for, let's say, take money for building roads, we go and party and have fun for ourselves, travel, and all those kind of things. And then our children and our grandchildren, our future generations,
Mhm.
come and they are paying a loan for the building of a road, but they cannot see that road. The road does not exist. Which and I can see that tickles you,
Yeah.
which raises the accountability questions,
Mhm.
because borrowing and public debt in and of itself, it's not just a technical financial conversation and
Mhm.
decision. It is also a political, it's also a philosophical, it's
Yeah.
also a governance, it's a
Mhm.
leadership question,
Yes.
because it's about what value
Mhm.
we place both on the sovereignty of the people
Mhm.
and how seriously those who have been given,
The mandate.
to whom the power has been delegated
Mhm.
as per the Constitution, take that value of the sovereignty of the people. Do they actually make decisions based on the best interests, especially from an accountability angle? And I
Yeah.
raise that because you have a situation where you have serious questions about where did some of this money go,
Mhm.
where you actually have money. Take an example of the Eurobond,
Mhm.
which is
We
one
sh-
of those
yeah.
bulk payments I
Yeah.
was telling you about.
Mhm.
Back to my Christmas example,
Example.
the
We
500
are
bob.
already on the 23rd.
Yeah, you're on the 23rd and you don't have the 500 bob. And
Yeah.
I'm saying, hey, Kesho, I need
Mhm.
my money.
Mhm.
We took 2 billion US dollars.
Mhm.
Right now, converting at 150 on a good day to about 300 billion Kenya shillings.
Mhm.
We have to pay that money.
Mhm.
But we have on record the Auditor General saying, hey, uh, some of this money was paid offshore
Mhm.
to clear some syndicated loans. A good portion of it that came here was spent outside the system, the
Mhm.
IFMIS system. IFMIS is the integrated system
Mhm.
where all spending has to be.
Go through.
And for most of it could not be traced to any specific project.
Mm.
So you cannot say that this money actually built that hospital or built that road. And that's according to the Auditor General.
For the case of our listeners, Dr. Arms is talking about that $2 billion that apparently, supposedly, Kenya borrowed.
Yes.
Yes, that is what he's talking
Yes,
about.
yes, yes. It's a Eurobond.
Mm-hmm.
When we went to the market, because this was, we went to the market looking for this money, we borrowed it for, for infrastructure,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't give the specifics, but it is possible. The desire was that you would actually be able, when you allocate the money, you say, we borrowed this money,
Mm.
this and this. That's just one example. And it raises, that's why I really wanted to address the point you're making, that when you just increase your deficit and then you go keep borrowing and borrowing and borrowing and borrowing,
Mm-hmm.
what basically you're saying that perhaps you're not very concerned about what will happen to the
In the
future.
future.
Take an example right now, even with the repayment of the Eurobond,
Mm-hmm.
our confidence is that we'll be able to pay the Eurobond because we have borrowed more money.
Yes.
That's the confidence right now, because we have money from the International Monetary Fund and we have money from the World Bank.
World Bank.
The president has been on record. I don't fault the borrowing in terms of, in a normal circumstance, we'll still borrow to be able to run. But when you are borrowing to pay loans, it means that there's a bigger fundamental question there.
Yes.
Because it means, one, that you did not put this money into an investment that could give you a return to be able to offset your obligations. So typically, again, it's an example of, you had borrowed me the money, the 500 bob, to go and buy this gadget, which you would sell for 1,200. Then you will give me back my 500, and you will make your income, your 50, your 150, minus my interest.
To quote COB Nyakango, when she was saying that we actually borrow money we fuliza it to drink that money.
So that's the question, because it's expected that whatever you borrow and invest in helps you to boost something. Boost your manufacturing sector, boost your transportation sector, boost your even labor. When you invest in schools and education, or even when you borrow and invest in healthcare, it means that you are increasing the capacity of your productive sector, of the people, of the human resource, which is a critical driver for that. But when now, so it typically almost looks like a situation whereby you have a Fuliza loan, and then you run to Tala and take a loan. You come and clear Fuliza, then Tala, when Tala comes calling, you go to another one, you borrow, and all those guys come calling, you go to some Shylock. Then they start calling all your relatives, threatening
put
them.
you in a WhatsApp group.
Threatening you, threatening them.
Yes.
To tell their brother or tell their whoever to pay their money. So it becomes a very, it's not a good situation. Almost shameful. Situation. So you're right, and that's what then makes our situation currently and very, very, very complicated, if not embarrassing, because then it means that money that you could be using to provide public services, you are using it to pay debt which even you are questioning, where was this money spent?
So that is very interesting that you're talking about it. And there are two things that you've mentioned that are quite interesting. And I would want to start off with, when you are talking about the Constitution and the sovereignty, and that bit where it says that the current and the future are responsible for whatever monies that come in or for the country. And I'm thinking, don't you think our leaders have read that and understood that? But you see, the way they say the Constitution is very clear. Don't you think they have read and understood that? So they are saying, we will borrow, we will misappropriate, because it is not only our burden, it is also a burden for the future. And this is how they're putting it. We have a 1% or even a 0 point something percent of the rich in this society. And we know that we've had politicians say, huku kwa salary, especially MCAs utasikia wakisema, hakuna pesa, but yet so many people vie for this seat. Why? Because when they get to this political world, it's an avenue to eat. It's an avenue to eat. Attender here, attender there, or hiyo mheshimiwa kind of name that we give them. So how they're using this is to say that mimi, it's my time to eat. Mimi na watoto wangu, wao wenyewe watajipanga. And now when it comes to that, they're saying the next person who is going to come, because by the way, they'll give me 5 years. They usually even put it out there and say, wacha nikule miaka yangu 5. Huyo mwingine, they will come and continue with where we left it, whether it is a lot of debt or not. Don't you think the leaders have understood that one section and said, oh, it's an opening for us, now we will eat it, because it is not only our responsibility, but also for the future that is going to come and run this political whatever office. Do you then not think it is about time we started thinking about that quote or article? And how do we then say, if you are the current leader and you misappropriate these funds, you will have to deal with that before you leave for future generations? Because I feel like they have gotten to that point where they have understood, oh, it's our responsibility. Right now, we are talking about the current regime complaining that this debt is not their making. that they are borrowing to come and offset that other debt. So the question that I'm having is, have we had that thing of understanding, or it's not only my conversation? And I think, do we then need to start that conversation of, if you misappropriate, you are in that office, you will have to pay that price. We have seen countries, these countries like the Asian countries, doing that, convicting leaders who have stolen money that does not belong to them, money belonging to the public. Do we then need to enforce that here in Kenya and maybe in Africa, and see that these things, people know when you sit on that, it's a hot seat for you? And I know that you've also mentioned something to do with default. I know we'll talk about it as we continue with this conversation. I want you to tie that response with, because we're also figuring out what are the solutions that we need to bring to fore. You've mentioned and you've given us so very many examples of a personal level, borrowing Tala to pay Fuliza. And you know, when I took Fuliza, nilichukua Fuliza nikaenda kwa bar, nikakunywa yote mpaka asubuhi. But now I need to pay my Fuliza. I've taken Tala to pay Fuliza. I've taken Branch to pay Tala. I've taken all the other money lenders. Mpaka nimefika mwisho where they're telling me wataniweka kwa WhatsApp group and blah, 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 blah. But you see, you mentioned that your pesa unaona, I did not do any investment. I went and drank the money. And that has been the quote unquote what has been equated to what Kenya has been doing. So I want you to also speak to how that national debt is affecting that mwananchi. Vile inatu affect sisi kwa watu wananchi kwa ground, as you marry that bit of a solution to this kind of a problem.
First of all, I think it's and I mean, the beauty is that with an understanding, we can locate the problem, and it's painful what you're describing, because it's a very harsh reality that a lot of people are running into politics, not necessarily to provide public services, and they say it openly, and that's why election after election, people know, you go in, luckily you're in, enjoy your time, then we'll come and remove you, and therefore it has not even mattered in some spaces whether you even perform or not, because they are good people. And I think it's important for us to underscore the fact that there are good people in this country. Yeah. Let's never forget. Sometimes we get so swamped into the bad, the ugly, and the painful, that we forget that there are men and women, boys and girls, if I was to put it that way, who really are living the values of Utu, of honoring other fellow human beings, of doing the right thing. And my desire, is that we continue to encourage such. But let me come back. I think the Utadu kind of ideology. Utadu is basically, what will you do? It's a short, as you know, it's a slang, it's a language. It's really messing us up, because when you look at the way corruption cases are handled, even those that are handled to the very end, they are handled slowly. They are pulled and pushed. By the time they are concluded, really, it's late in the day, as it were. So I think we are not going to go far unless we can enforce the rule of law, because it's only the rule of law when that will make sure that people can actually be able to continue doing the right thing. Because you see, unless there is a reward, and that's why I wanted to tie it, there is a reward for the guys who do the right thing, and there is a punishment for those who do the wrong thing. You cannot move things. Because right now, there's no reward for the good guys, neither are there consequences for the bad guys.
And those awards that people are given, MBS,
Yes,
EGH, are they rewards for good
those
guys?
ones are special. But you see, reward is beyond just a recognition of that kind of a thing. Reward is even in the environment. The reward is in the day-to-day engagements. The reward is in the kind of people as a society we popularize and promote. The kind of people we talk about. Those are not the headlines that we talk about. We don't talk about people who have saved the country money. We talk about those who have swindled. So I think for me, that's central. So rule of law, enforcement, right to the point. And two, I think, yes, part of the constitution enforcement is to say that once you have been a public servant, you actually are liable. And that's the truth, actually. You are liable for your actions in the present and in the future.
Yeah.
But that's not what you see, you know. So I don't think there's a way out of that. It's a long road, but there's the only way to ensure that the rule of law is enforced. People are brought to book, but also those who are doing the right thing are also rewarded. They're also encouraged. Because if you don't reward them, then people can see, oh, it doesn't matter whether you are good or bad, it will be the same. Two, I think it's time to reduce the political premium we have on positions of political leadership. I think we put too much premium in them, from the amount of decisions you can make to the amount of expectations we have of politicians. We seem to have accepted that actually politicians can steal. What we have debate about is how they should use their money that they steal. Let me give you an example. When you get into these conversations around um, fundraising, it's a very basic example. People are thinking, oh, we have this hospital bill, or we have this situation, or even a religious activity. We need to raise money for this and this activity. Who are the first people think about? It's the politicians.
Yeah.
They put them on the list and they say, these are the amount of money that we want to collect, and the question is, now imagine that group there is thinking about their MP being a guest of honor. That group there is thinking about their MP being a guest of honor. How much money does this guy earn, or does she earn, to be able to contribute? And then, because that's the mode of operation, and some even say, even when they go to their own homes, people are lining up. You go to their offices here at Continental House.
Yeah.
People are queuing everywhere. Everybody expects this guy to, one showed me the pack of cards they had of invitations for all manner of things. You see, quietly, we seem to have accepted that it's okay. You can do whatever we want with our money. We will get it back through other means. And therefore, the questions around accountability become very difficult, because the people who should be asking them have also benefited from that kind of a structure. But what does this mean? Sometimes we don't seem to connect what this debt situation means to our day-to-day lives.
Yes.
What it means is that road that was supposed to be done, that has not been done, or where shortcuts were made because everybody in that chain is corrupted or whatever you. That health facility that was supposed to be done, that is not been done, means that if when you need to use that service, you have to pay out of your pocket. You have to incur a cost out of your pocket. So right now, because of the repayment, for instance, of public debt, you have to raise the revenues. How do you raise the revenue? You increase taxes. And now you have taxes being increased everywhere. Because, as I've explained to you, if your only wiggle room is some 30 shilling, 30% of revenue collection, what you do, you have to increase the amount you're collecting, so that at least this 30% is significant, as it were. And that has very direct implications in what your take home becomes. It has a direct implication in terms of how much money you have to do other things. Because if taxes take so much, if you go to, just the example, for instance, of what we presented, we've been talking about, when you look at, fuel cost, whether it's super petrol or kerosene or diesel, you have about many taxes there, levies and rates. If you go to your electricity bill, you go to many other, and the examples are endless. So even if out there you have no business with what public debt is all about.
Mhm.
Its repayment does not excuse you either. Everybody has to pay, you know, and government has no other source, as I have said, apart from raising
Revenue collection.
revenue collection by raising more taxes
Mhm.
or borrowing more.
Borrowing. Mhm.
And remember, all borrowing is future tax,
Mm.
whichever way you look at it.
Mm.
Just like even at a personal level, all your loans are your anticipated future incomes.
Incomes. Yeah.
They are to be paid off through your future income.
Yeah.
That's why when you go to ask for a loan, even in your SACCO or in your bank, they ask for your employment contract
Yeah.
or whatever it is. You know, they ask what they want to have a surety is that you will have an income in the future.
Yeah.
Two, that income is not reducing or is not expected to reduce,
Mhm.
and therefore you will be able to honor your repayment.
Mm.
For the government, they are in charge of a society,
Mhm.
and they expect that the taxes of the future will help to pay off the debts.
Mm.
But you see, the expectation is that those debts that are taken are actually going towards investment that will create more incomes,
Mm.
will make people more productive, so that when you come to collect taxes, there's something to collect from.
Mm.
No, literally, it's like taking the loan to feed your cow more so that the cow produces more
More
milk,
milk. Mhm.
so that when you go and sell your milk, you have more income and you pay off your loan.
You pay
So
off your loan.
it makes a business sense.
Yeah.
So as a people, which is connected to that, then it behoves then that first, the conversation about how our money is being spent
Mhm.
is not something you can leave to other people to do it for you.
Mhm.
Especially because a good number of us go out there and vote, including those who don't vote, still vote.
The voting has actually become a rhetoric
Yes,
right now.
but you see, even those who don't vote, like those who don't wake up early in the morning or whatever, sleep in and very late in the
Uh-huh.
afternoon,
Mhm.
they still vote. They only vote with their feet.
Mhm.
They don't cast an actual vote,
Yes.
because what they vote, they 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 give up their power to make decisions
Mhm.
to others,
Yeah.
which is the most powerful communication. You know,
Mhm.
they say it's literally like saying, "I will not be there for that meeting,
Mhm.
but whatever you guys agreed on
Mhm.
binds me." So literally, those who don't vote allow others to go and make a decision for
On
them.
their
So they are
behalf.
bound. And therefore, when, for instance, policies are being implemented,
Mhm.
when taxes are being collected,
Mhm.
you cannot say, no, 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 I didn't vote this government, so I'm
Mm.
not paying taxes. Those who voted the government, let them go and take care of their government.
And
You
that
see,
has been happening on TikTok. We've
yeah,
seen people saying, Asita Lipa, I did not vote.
that's not that's not a choice
Mhm.
you have.
Mm.
Uh, and therefore, those people you voted, you have
Mhm.
a right to ask questions.
Yeah.
You have a right to ask questions about how is our money being spent.
Mm.
How, through your member of parliament, through your MCAs, through your senators, and all these things, these structures. But secondly, um, the people again responsible for most of these decisions are also fellow Kenyans.
Yes.
And it behooves on them to really appreciate that they can do things differently.
Mhm.
This sounds very difficult to say, but the reality that the future decisions, the future effect of your current decisions
Mhm.
will not spare you either
Mm.
is a reality.
Yeah.
So that today I could be seated somewhere in a senior position within this government. Tomorrow I'll be a consumer of my own decisions, of the choices that I made.
Mhm.
So if you have a choice to make, why not make the right ones?
Yeah.
That will advance. I think that's what I would say.
Mhm.
But let's come to what you asked, really, where we are currently. What do we do?
Mm.
uh, we literally are staring at 3 or 4 major roads,
Mhm.
and we have to make a choice.
Mhm.
We are not going to we are not going to walk on all of them.
Mhm.
The first one is honor all our obligations as they are.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that means that something has to give.
Mm-hmm.
And the giving here is one, either we borrow more
Mm-hmm.
to honor our obligations.
The
Yeah.
cycle continues.
Yeah. So we borrow more to be able to honor our current obligations.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Mm-hmm.
we give up on certain services. That means cutting on expenditure.
Mm-hmm.
Or, which is related to
Number
we-
two.
to number two,
Mm-hmm.
go hard on cutting wastage, because you don't have to give up services.
Mm-hmm.
You can cut on wastage
Mm-hmm.
and corruption.
Mm-hmm.
What that does, it saves you money to
Mhm.
be able to honor. Remember, the first option is honor all
On
our
all obligations.
based on the argument I made
Mhm.
for you
Mhm.
that you have only 30 shillings.
Mm-hmm.
You have
To
to pay
distribute.
in fact, to be precise, 72 shillings. You have to pay 72 shillings out of every coin you collect
Mm-hmm.
to debt this year. I mean, no conversation, no discussion. So that's option one.
Mm-hmm.
Option two is flip it and say that instead of honoring all our debt obligations, we are going to go for a restructuring of some of them.
Yeah.
Effectively called a default.
Oh, that is okay.
Yeah, it's a
it's a default.
So a
Please
default,
expound.
Yeah,
further.
so a default means getting back to my Christmas guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I owe you 500. It's
Mhm.
23rd. Christmas is on 25th. I come to you and I realize even if whatever I do, I can't pay you.
Sina hiyo pesa.
Sina.
Mm-hmm.
So I come to you. I tell you now, I would like to change plan.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to pay you this money in January,
Mm-hmm.
end of January. So first of all, what I have done, I have negated all the agreement
Mm-hmm.
we had made. Whatever else I say after that is now up for discussion,
Mm-hmm.
because the initial agreement was
I
that I would
said,
pay you on 24th.
Haiwezi.
And I have told you I won't.
Mm-hmm. It's not even I can't.
No. Yeah. I won't. I won't pay you on 24th.
Mm-hmm.
Or I can't, whatever. English is a bit.
No, I'm saying when you say I can't, it's like nimetafuta pesa haimekata. I won't is like maybe I have money, but then you see as important.
Whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
You see, it could as well be that.
Mhm.
So where you see, looking at the kind of number of children that need to transit into
High school. Mhm.
that we need to pay, I cannot.
Yeah.
So I need to take that as a priority.
Uh-huh.
So you go into that conversation of default. But you see, that's me coming to you and telling you, I can't. I'm unable. Please, can we renegotiate?
Mm-hmm.
Then you tell me, okay, fine. So I gave you 500 shillings. I'd given you a 10% interest rate. Fine. I can have it in January, but now the interest rate now goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll get it at 20% interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
So then that means instead of paying you 550, have to pay you 600 shillings.
Mm-hmm.
And we can even agree on how. But the fact is, the initial agreement
it's null and void.
It's null and void at this point.
And let me ask you: you've come to me with the same debt, and you've told me I can't repay. Enyewe imekata, or niko na other priorities that I need to look at first. You have given me the proposal of restructuring, as you had saying. Then I tell you, I still want my money on the 24th.
Yeah. So then
what happens next?
So if you tell me you still need your money, then something has to give.
Mm-hmm.
So because you have the power and you have the ability, and I don't want to mess things up, then I have to go and give up something, or I have to go and sell something perhaps I own.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can come for me, I come hard, and pick it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Pick the collateral that I had. Maybe I had given you of collateral.
Mm-hmm.
You say, Sasa, I go sell it. I go literally sell this, and banks do that.
Mm-hmm.
They go sell your collateral
so
that they recover their money.
Mm-hmm.
But this kind of conversation is where I bring myself to you
before you come for me.
Yes.
Before I come for you, you come.
But then you can come for me.
Okay.
It's still a default. You can come for me,
Mhm.
and you tell me, I've been watching you, and I am very clear you will not be able to pay.
Mhm.
You are trying to just be nice, but this one you will not be able to pay. So here I
Imekataa.
am tabling new terms
Mhm.
of how you are going to manage this.
Mhm.
Of course, in this one, all your care is about your interest. In both,
Mhm.
you're trying to protect your interest.
Yeah.
I don't know where we are. I'm not too sure to tell very clearly where we are as a country.
Mhm.
But the reason for doing both, especially the one we call the preemptive, where you take yourself,
Mhm.
is because there are certain other obligations that you need to take care of. So where the country says, instead of getting ourselves into a more mess of borrowing much, much more,
Mhm.
why don't we try and just use the money we have to manage these floods
Mhm.
and manage, these outbreaks,
Yeah.
and treat people and do all that needs to be done? And therefore, that's why we are pushing for a restructuring,
Yeah.
or we are investing in this and this sector. Let's up our productivity.
Mm.
So, so the reason for having that kind of a conversation, of course, it is taken very differently, because by the time you and I are having that conversation, you know, you can go to the other guys, you can put it on WhatsApp, or
I have done all those things,
this
including
guy,
bringing people together.
first of all, is a dangerous borrower. He's actually defaulting on my loans.
Mhm.
So if he has approached you to help him, just know he's a risky one.
Like the way on newspapers you see these faces, we no longer work
Oh,
with this person.
yes.
Mhm.
So that's what happens in the international space.
Uh-huh.
So a default sends a very negative message.
Oh my.
It says,
There's a
this
problem with
is
these
a risky
people.
space.
Mhm.
So investors hold back. Guys who wanted to put in their money, they're like, no, let's wait. Those who had lent the money, because you're not the only one
Mhm.
who I had lent to,
They start becoming now.
start panicking.
Yeah.
So they want their money now. Before things go bad,
Mm.
they want their money now. So you create a crisis. And that's why default is not. And when you look at the countries where they have had to go that road of restructuring,
Mhm.
it's not been very easy.
Mm.
Zambia just the other day announced and said, no, we can't actually do the restructuring right
Yeah.
now anymore. We wanted to do it, but we are not able. So it sends a very, and perhaps that explains why the jittery, even within government circles,
Mhm.
of any conversation around
A restructuring or
structuring around a
a
default,
default.
of sorts. That does not mean that the conversation does not happen. It does happen. It does happen. So that's the second really big option.
Mhm.
The third option is to say that we are going to sustain both our repayments,
Mhm.
and we are going to retain our service delivery,
Mhm.
but we are going to do a radical restructuring of how our public sector is organized.
Uh-huh.
So remember, the first one had to do with curbing
Honoring.
corruption.
Yeah.
There's an option, part of the first option of saying that we are going to honor our debt
Yeah.
obligations.
Mhm. Then cutting down on certain services.
Cutting down on certain services.
Mhm.
This one is where you say you will structure. And restructuring here is taking big pieces of your expenditure
Mhm.
that are not necessarily being very productive.
Okay.
And that's what you're seeing right now, even the government is trying to do.
Mhm.
You start selling off your assets.
Mhm.
You take state-owned corporations and start privatizing
them. Okay.
selling them off
Mhm.
to make money.
So
Because
that-
you've decided this initial road is not the road we are going.
Mm.
We are neither going to cut on public services,
Mhm.
we are neither going to default,
Mhm.
so we are going to pay all our obligations.
Mhm.
So you look around. So I now look at my guy and say, now I still want to honor my family and take it for Christmas tomorrow,
Mhm.
and I still want to pay
Mhm.
your 500 shillings.
Yeah.
So I go and pick that cow, or I pick that goat that honestly is not is not productive,
Mhm.
as it were,
Mhm.
and I sell,
Mhm. Mhm.
or even pick this gadget I had bought and sell it at a throwaway price because it's no longer even helping me
Yeah.
as I thought it would.
Mm.
And I come, I pay you,
Mm.
and I still have some.
Some.
So that's where we are right now.
And I would want, sorry, I'm cutting you because I'm feeling like I need to put this question in because we have sold. I have seen this is not working and I need to pay you money. So I've taken my goat that is no longer giving me milk.
Yeah.
Okay, goat give milk. Eh?
Yes, yes.
It's no longer giving me milk. And now I want to sell it. But then once I sell it, that money I forget I was supposed to pay you. I start doing my own shenanigans.
I don't think that option now.
So the question that I'm coming
Yeah.
to is the question of transparency and accountability, because we have had situations where, and I usually tell people, the amount of commissions of inquiry that are set up in this country are amazing. We are setting up a commission of inquiry to inquire this money that was lost. We have had so many scandals, scandal after scandals, and they do not talk of thousands of shillings. Some have gone to billions of shillings, and then when you see the people that are mentioned are less than 10. So you even wonder, what are we doing with this conversation? So I have sold my cargot,
Yes.
but I have not honored the obligations that I had. So the question that I want to bring on board is two. One, the issue of transparency and accountability. And I know that we are Okoa Uchumi, and we've really tried to push for public debt management, especially transparency and accountability in public debt management. But then I also want you to speak on the oversight institutions that we have. We have the way the government has been put to work. It should work in a way that before the money is budgeted by COB, we have auditors that are going through everything that we're doing. We have Parliament that is the mother of all oversight, that has gone through everything that is being budgeted for. You mentioned before anything that we budget for, Parliament needs to know. So all these oversight institutions that we have in this country will have been put in place so that no coin goes to waste. But then we are having a point here where you're saying we need to cut on wastage. So wastage is a thing in this country.
It is.
So you can give us more on that.
Yeah, transparency is a big question, and I think a lot of the conversation from the very beginning is saying that accountability driven by transparency, because transparency has to be about being open, you know, and the about being open, how much money is being borrowed for what, and when it was borrowed, being accountable, basically being responsible for this is how it was spent. I think the experience you shared earlier is pure impunity, where I actually tell you, I'm going to sell this goat, I'm bringing you your money, then I disappear.
Yeah.
And when you call, I ask you, so what do you want me to do? Yeah, I sold the goat. I got the money. Then I decided to just party. After all, the problems I have are many.
Actually, they usually say, kama ile pesa uko nayo haiwezi kutatulia shida yako, ikule.
Kula yote. So, and for me, that sense of impunity is perhaps more dangerous, and that's what I was talking about. This utadu, what will you do?
Yeah.
With me. We do not have a lot of clarity on actually how much is owed. Particularly, what are the conditions, the terms, the fine print within those debts that we are paying. And this is official information because, as I've said, the Auditor General has raised questions, the Controller of Budget has raised questions. Recently, the newly formed Committee on Privatization and Public Debt in the National Assembly has raised similar questions. And they are saying there are terms that are not clear of, what are the actual obligations. You see, it is not enough to know that we have borrowed or we have incurred a debt of 200 billion or 3 billion or even 50 shillings. What matters is what are the conditions, because the conditions could be very impunitive. Remember, we are dealing with the matters of national sovereignty. So what is the collateral? What is the assurance given by the government in terms of that we will pay this money? Does it involve national resources? What exactly does it entail?
Yeah.
In that sense. And I think that's a place where we will need to make a lot of steps. But having said that, I think it's good to congratulate the government. This may sound quite interesting because, to be honest, we now know so much more about the state of our public debt than we knew
in the previous government
5-10 years ago. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
Give it as a result of the Constitution, Article 35,
Mm-hmm.
that makes a lot of public information now public.
Mm-hmm.
So there's quite a lot of, in fact, right now, if you go to the National Treasury website,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get information that is quite interesting. You'll get information, for instance, even the people who borrow domestically. Who are they? What percentage are they? How many of them are banks? How many of them are insurance companies? How many
Mm-hmm.
of them are pension funds? How many are individuals? The money we've borrowed from outside. So we have a fair level of detail.
Mm-hmm.
So we have made progress.
Mm-hmm.
As we are saying, really what we still don't have is what are the terms and conditions that are attached to a lot of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And what do they mean? But secondly, the biggest challenge is also visibility and transparency as to where the money that was borrowed was spent and
Yeah.
is being spent.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more critical,
Mm-hmm.
because then it gives people, they say the best watchdogs of public money is the public
Mm-hmm.
themselves. And therefore, when there is clarity of this money has been borrowed, this road is being built with money borrowed for this and that and that,
Mm-hmm.
um, you you have to engage in ensuring that the money is being spent properly.
Mm-hmm.
So the accountability question is definitely a big, big, big area of work,
Mm-hmm.
because is what starts to answer the question of, yes, we are paying these debts and we know where the money was spent.
Mm-hmm.
So it becomes easier. There are things you go through painfully and you are grateful
Yeah.
because they benefited you. So
Mm-hmm.
it's painful,
Yeah.
but they benefited me. And that responsibility will not run away from Parliament at all, because it's the institution that we have given power, because the control of budget, the Auditor General, all these institutions all converge at the National Assembly,
Yeah.
and Senate together, forming the Parliament. That's where they converge. That's where they provide the information. And at the county level, the county assemblies. And those are the spaces where citizens also now
Mm-hmm.
need to demand more and more to know how is our money being spent? On what is it being spent? Where is it being spent? So the accountability, and this is not a responsibility we can leave, as I say, to a few.
Yeah.
Because we have spaces we can ask questions. Can you imagine 10 million Kenyans asking questions about where the money is being spent? Somebody will have to answer,
It is true.
because those are people who can choose to vote and vote very differently.
Yeah.
But when many of us keep quiet and watch, and almost as though it doesn't disturb us, and so it doesn't affect us, only to complain when we get to the petrol station and we need to fuel, and you're like, this fuel is too much. Or when you need to take your children to school and you have to take them to a private school because now, the capitation is not being transferred. I think for me, that's what I would say as a start for a conversation around public debt. Many intertwined issues, but I think we have the perfect time. Must have been Winston Churchill who said, never waste a good crisis.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have a good crisis in the sense that everybody is focused on this. More, visible because of the cost of living situation.
Yeah.
Let's do something.
Yeah.
Let's engage our MPs. Let's push them to make firm decisions about what needs to be done.
Yeah, that is actually very interesting, because I wanted us to discuss more, but apparently and unfortunately, time has gone. I thought that we'd have so much time to discuss so
Don't
much.
worry. It's a good start.
But anyway, as we wrap up, and this is our last, I would want us to be very brief on this one, is on our future. I know you've mentioned the debt options that we have, how we can go about them, who we need to put into account, who we need to ask the questions, because you had mentioned that we have all these oversights and you have everybody complaining, everybody is saying there's a problem, but I'm just wondering, who are we telling there's a problem, and whom do we expect to give us that solution? So what I would want us to discuss is briefly on that, and then on our future, like you said, Kenya is going to be, governments are always here. Kenya is going to be here in our generation, the next generation, and other generations to come, not unless we have an Armageddon or something, apocalypse of something. But then what looking ahead, what are some of these things that you think, do you have hope? Let me ask you, do you have hope for the public debt situation in this country, looking ahead very briefly, and then, yeah.
I think part of it in the previous, I think I've mentioned some of the things that I think we can do. And do I have hope? That's a very interesting question. Yes, I do.
Mhm.
Yes, I do, because as I've said, I have hope because of these many Kenyans who continue to do the right thing. Those guys give me hope.
Mhm.
I may not see them on the headlines every day. They may be sometimes tucked somewhere. They've saved a life somewhere here. They have done the right thing. They've refused to sign. They have, and some at a very high personal cost.
Mhm.
So that gives me hope that such people, can't turn things around.
Mhm.
Uh, the future and how things are likely to turn out. First of all, we also within a global economy, and
Okay.
things are not necessarily doing very well even
True.
globally.
Mm.
And therefore, there's a high possibility that there's going to be more pain before there's relief in the coming days. But I think there are ways in which the pain can be reduced.
Mhm.
And one which we've put across is to say, do you need to levy all these taxes and fees and rates and whatever it is at this particular point? Or are
Mhm.
there things that can wait? Are there things that you can postpone, including even very well-intentioned programs that can wait, or projects that can wait? Um, and calls for leadership. That calls for leadership, calls for the government of the day, the president of the day, to make tough calls,
Mhm.
and acknowledge the crisis for what it is, you know, and regardless of who caused it and who created it,
Mhm.
it is what it is. And when we are all that, then we are able to we are able to work our way out. And countries, like Greece, have worked their way out of very dire situations.
Mhm.
Still not out the woods completely, but they've been able to work their way out, of course, with the support from others. But lastly, is a very firm belief
Mhm.
that we as Kenyans are the only ones who can build Kenya. We can get help, but we cannot be built for.
Okay.
And therefore we cannot uh, abdicate our responsibility or delegate it to somebody else.
Mhm.
No other person, no other country can build Kenya for us.
Mhm.
We are the only ones. So Germans after the war had to rebuild their Germany.
Mhm.
The Japanese after the war, they had to rebuild their Japan. Even the Americans. All these spaces they have had to build, and we also as Kenyans and Africans, we have to build our economies.
Yeah.
But as we do it, let's not destroy so that we build.
Yeah.
You don't have to tear it apart so that then you put it together.
Mm.
Let's build on the things that are already, very strong, you know, corporate collective cultures.
Yeah.
So I think there are things we can do,
Mhm.
but they are not quick fixes.
Yeah.
But they are fixes,
Mhm.
but they're not quick. They're going to be painful. They are going to require turnaround, change of mindsets. But it's the only way.
Mhm.
Otherwise, then we just watch and let things just be on a free fall,
Mm.
and of course the cost will be very high.
Yeah.
Yeah, that will be my take.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Arms. And yes,
Welcome.
What Dr. Arms has told us is that Africa has the potential, and so we need to start working on that potential. We need to rebuild, and it is not going to be a quick fix. It's going to take some time. It's going to be a bit painful, but at the end of the day, we will see the fruits. So that has been Okoa Uchumi podcast, and I have been in the very good hands in terms of understanding and insightful insights from Dr. Arms, or rather, let me just mention his entire name, Abraham Rugo. Dr. Rugo, as I had mentioned, is a country manager at IBPK. IBPK is part of the Okoa Uchumi campaign that is bringing us this podcast. We hope we have been informative. I really hope that you've been informative. The information that I gained here is quite massive. We welcome your comments and questions via all our platforms as you continue to advocate for transparency and accountability in public finance and debt management. I have been your host, Rosalia Wangoi Karanja. a communications and a policy advocacy specialist. And you can also find me on X on at Koi Karanja, Koi with a Q, QUI. And let's continue engaging. Bye bye from now and listen to our next episode. Asante sana.